Hello, everyone. Welcome to this conversation on building scalable applications on AWS Cloud. Global public cloud spending is at about $330 odd billion, growing at about 20% year over year. Everybody is rushing to adopt cloud, especially post-pandemic. But are they doing it in the right manner? Research shows that only 5% of users today are mature cloud users. So clearly there's a long way to go. With me today in this conversation, I have two extremely knowledgeable and experienced cloud professionals who will share common pitfalls on scaling software applications on the cloud and best practices to extract maximum from cloud computing for diverse customers. First up, we have Akanksha Bilani, Regional Alliance Head, AWS, APAC and Japan at Intel. Akanksha leads the Intel partnership with Amazon for APAC and Japan. She brings in Intel and AWS partnership value and drives ecosystem impact through technology leadership in migration, AI, high performance computing, and H2 cloud. We also have with us today Kanishk Agiwal, Head Service Lines India South Asia at Amazon Web Services. At Amazon Web Services, he focuses on deep tech and works extensively with the public sector, central state governments, education and healthcare sector, not-for-profit, travel, transportation, and PSUs to drive cloud at scale for citizen impact. Welcome to the chat today, Akanksha and Kanishka.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Thank you. So let's get this started. The first question, Akanksha, to you. Given the changing customer experience and increased internet usage, every business today demands applications that are robust and could scale fast. How has building applications on cloud made it easier to scale faster and increase the reach?
Yes. I think really, if we were to look at this question in the right way, it's very relevant to the audience here today, Achutya. When we're looking at driving and building these applications and getting the customers to get the experience of how the software or this infrastructure is going to help them solve their business challenges, how are they going to get more competitive in the market? How are they going to help service their customers? It's really about trying to see if there is a new normal, and to see if there's things that can help drive economies of scale, that help drive more productivity, and also help them be a lot more up to date with what is the latest and greatest from a technology perspective. And so when between Intel and AWS, when we start to work with accounts or with customers, whether it's public sector or across, we try to recognize what is it that they really need this technology for. Cloud has really transformed, our daily bread and butter, and opportunities have come about with the kind of demand that has brought this into the market. The pandemic is a perfect example of how cloud really helped drive continuous business growth, regardless of the fact that people could not even come into the offices to work on the infrastructure that they had, right? And so with that, what I think in a collaboration mode, what we try to do is recognize what people really need from the cloud and what are they trying to solve with the infrastructure that they need from a technology perspective, bring an equilibrium on the table with that, and then carry that into applications, optimizations, and the agility that is required from the technology to help them solve their problems. So it's not a one size fits all. It's not going to answer every person's question, but it's really about how every person's challenge is being addressed by cloud with agility, with speed, and with the right economies of scale that makes us all profitable in the market today.
I think you've hit the ball on the head, Akanksha, in the sense that it's not a one size fit all policy. I mean, people want to use cloud. I think they should use cloud in the manner that suits them the most, and it can differ because of your size, your business, your vertical, your the timing. I think all these play a crucial role there. Same question to you, Kanishka. You've been on the developer side. How has building clouds application on cloud? How has the scaling happened? I mean, are there any metrics that you could share? How has this scale become faster? How has the reach increased? I mean, happy to hear this thoughts from you also.
Sure. So, for anybody building on cloud, it's typically 5 key parameters that cloud helps essentially solve for. The first one is agility. And you can today have people get on clouds, customers get on clouds, enterprises, startups get on cloud, and quickly spin up instances, quickly spin up resources as they need them, deploy them sometimes hundreds of these servers or even thousands of these servers in minutes. I mean, think of it, if you were to do it an on-prem server, you just wouldn't have that kind of scale or velocity to do it. So you are able to very quickly deploy. And if it fails, then you can actually bring down an instance and bring up a new instance immediately. So your experimentation, your innovation just goes that much faster. So that's the number one reason. The second is, and that's really the elephant in the room, is the cost savings. And this often comes up as a discussion of, is cloud going to be expensive or will it actually bring down our costs? And if you look at it, when you were to actually get into solutioning an on-premise system, you are locking in CapEx. There is an eventual sum of money or sum of CapEx that you set aside, and then you apportion that over a period of time, 5, 7, 10 years. But it's really a lot of investment that goes in for different varied workloads. And what you could do is you can actually trade this capital expense for variable expense, and you only pay for as you consume it. Think of it like an electricity switch, right? You pay for it when you turn on the switch. You don't pay for it when you switch it off. And to your point, are there any savings? Yeah. Look at what Dow Jones is doing. Dow Jones actually estimated that just by migrating their data centers to AWS, they would have a global saving of about $100 million in just infrastructure costs. And this is across the board, where people end up actually spending much, much lower from a total cost ownership on cloud as opposed to on-premise. The third is around elasticity. And customers are now beginning to understand that you can't provision for the peak, nor can you provision for the trough. You will have varying capacities at each point in time. If you've provisioned for a peak, then you will have an issue of underutilized capacity. And if you provision for the trough, you will have issues of just running over capacity. Whereas with cloud, you can really go up and down. Take Amazon itself. We're running the Black Friday sale today. I'm sure the peaks are going much higher. But come post Cyber Monday and Tuesday, the peaks will start going lower. Would I deprovision those servers? Probably not. What we're doing is on the cloud, they are scaling up and scaling down quickly on that for meeting business needs. The fourth one that we look for is that your innovation is that much faster, because now you can have your employees, your developers, your workforce focus on things that actually matter, that differentiate your business against another business, as opposed to getting into this undifferentiated infrastructure, heavy lifting, or managing a data center. And finally, you can actually get to deploy all of this globally. Think of all the regions that AWS has. You can actually go ahead and deploy in literally minutes with almost the same latency, whether it's in Asia, Europe, Africa, Australia, or the US, and you can replicate out your entire application across it. So this is where I think you're able to scale so much faster and increase your reach.
Thanks, Kanishka. A follow-up question, I think maybe Akanksha, you want to take this first. I think when application demand is peaking, right, enterprises need to maintain availability of the app, uptime, downtime, capacity, because of the load. You just talked about it for Cyber Monday and Black Friday, right? How can they evaluate the need, whether they have to scale up or scale out? I mean, add additional hardware. I mean, what is the decision making that goes in?
Yeah, I think for that, Achyuta, we definitely do require the right type of domain expertise and the technologists within those organizations that really know how they can really focus on the TCO of the infrastructure that they have and what this infrastructure is going to do for them. That's going to, again, make sure that they help meet the demands of their customers, right? And so for that, it's really a decision between the CTO. It's a decision with the IT analysts, with their developer managers, with their cloud or their data center managers, kind of coming together and really identifying which components of this business challenge is going to be addressed by cloud. Exactly to what Kanishka mentioned, if the requirement is agility, if the requirement is to be cutting edge and state of the edge, if the requirement is to be seamless, and have that capability of reducing latency and spreading its scale across the various customers, then obviously they will need to take a decision on cloud and infrastructure and investment in cloud. And what kind of investment will be dependent on the workloads that they want to take advantage of. Do they want to do AI? Do they want to do HPC? Do they want to do IoT on the edge? Do they want to, or on the cloud? Do they just want to migrate and host their databases in a more effective way? So depending on the workloads that they want to target is also something that's very critical for customers and the IT department specifically to keep in mind when they're making decisions on cloud acquisitions and what they want cloud to do for them.
Sure, that makes sense. Same thing for you, Kanishka. You know, you're in conversation with clients day in, day out, right? I mean, how do you help them evaluate what do they need to do? Do they need to scale up or do they need to scale out?
Yeah, so just reiterating one other point, and before I also talk about the overall re-architecting of your enterprise, right? And especially your technical architectures, your applications. What's also unique to cloud is that your scale up or scale outs are fairly dynamic. So you don't have to really run it per se, where say, look, I'm going to provision 5 instances right now, and that's about it I'll have. I cannot scale up or scale down based on need. No, you could dynamically go up or go down, and it's really the cloud infrastructure that will manage this out for you. So think of a peak that you might hit, and that's where serverless architectures come extremely in handy. We've today got solutions that somebody might be posting an image, and every time an image is uploaded, all they need to do is look at that image, verify it is safe to be uploaded, and then go ahead and post it. But the rest of the time, the algorithm doesn't need to run. I don't need an ML recognition algorithm to run for 24/7 because the images are not uploaded every now and then. They're probably coming in batches or they're coming infrequently. So what do I do is then put that out on a serverless architecture, which is there's a trigger. Every time an image is posted out, it triggers this particular script. The ML algorithm reads it, qualifies it to be safe, takes a particular action, and then shuts itself down. So what I'm doing is really making sure that my scale up and scale down are fairly automated, and I'm not using up a complete instance for it. But if I also had sudden peaks coming, and again using the Black Friday example, if I had a sudden peak coming in, then is my architecture resilient enough, and have I put in those dynamic limits across my entire architecture so that it can scale up during those peak of those 4 days and then scale down starting from Tuesday morning without any of us requiring a human intervention. That's one. The second is cloud itself requires a different way of architecting. When you architect for an on-premise system, you probably are using containers. You're probably not using as many containers as you actually do on cloud, but you're still using traditional services to put this out. When you put it on cloud, you're then looking at a lot of containers to put in your applications into so that they're isolated, they're working in silos, but still have microservices architecture based out there. When you're looking at cloud, you're again saying, how can I start bringing in multiple services in from the same, say, availability zone or from the same region so that my latency is lower? So you could be talking about some of these architecture discussions. And overall, you could just be looking at how can I more focus on an efficient code as opposed to focusing on how do I distribute my code across different machines, because that the cloud does it for you.
Agree. And on the same topic, maybe Kanishka, you want to take this right now. So cloud native application architecture development, it differs from traditional architecture development, right? I mean, which would run under on-premise. I think the lift and shift doesn't work very well. Most people try to do that to start with, but it doesn't work very well. But changing an architecture to suit the cloud environment is something that people should do, but it presents a challenge also, right, from an engineering perspective. So what are the key challenges that enterprises should focus on when they decide to move their application from on-prem to cloud? And you can talk about mature users, you can talk about entry-level users, you can talk about intermediate users. I think the challenges may be different for each of them.
Right. I think fundamentally there is one underlying theme across all of them, right? Whether it's startups or enterprises, that's the entire spectrum that we cover there. And it's not so much technical. I obviously touched upon what we can do technically of re-architecting is, but fundamentally the challenge is really about people and culture. And you will have the most differences actually between organizations that are talking about moving to cloud and that are actually going to do it. And that's the difference between what is success for those that just talk about it and those that they actually do it. And there are really three things. One is obviously, as any change management exercise or people exercise will tell you, is do you have senior leadership buy-in? When you're on an on-premise sort of an environment, there are multiple departments, multiple, let's just say, different P&Ls that have different parts of the organization. But if your senior leadership is absolutely aligned and truly committed to what they want to get out of cloud, then they need to be setting a very clear direction for the rest of the team or the rest of the organization of how do we get to be working towards the same goal. And it's very easy for somebody to just do nothing, or others in the organization to start blocking if the leadership is not making it a priority or building culture for change. The second is that once you start putting it on cloud, then you must have a very aggressive top-down goal. And we strongly recommend that everybody comes with a strong project management approach to it. It's not one of those things that, well, yeah, we'll move to cloud and it'll somehow happen. It does not. It is a fairly intense exercise that requires a very top-down project management clinical approach to it. And the final part is, do you have people that are actually trained on cloud and comfortable with using the cloud, comfortable with concepts in cloud? So as this migration happens, are you able to skill your workforce to now work on a different machine or on a different, let's say, a thin client, but really connected to the cloud that can bring it? And there are today hundreds and thousands of people that are being trained, in fact, by AWS, by Intel, exactly for that purpose. The last piece that I do want to make is, let's not take this as an either in or all out approach. Most organizations will get paralyzed if they don't figure out how do I move that very last workload. You don't need to move all your workloads. You don't need to boil the ocean on day one. You will work initially getting certain applications on the cloud, then later build a plan for a short term, medium term, long term, and stick to that plan. And that's where you will realize the benefits, as opposed to going in, well, let's do a complete lift and shift. And that's where both the people and the technical challenges start coming in.
Agree, Kanishka. I think it's very well put together. Even the order of the issues also are put together. I think same question for you, Akanksha. Intel has been on the cloud for some time. Do you relate to what Kanishka shared, the journey, the pitfalls, the challenges? Is top level buy-in the main criteria or the key criteria which determine success of cloud? I mean, happy to hear some insights from your journey on cloud so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll represent both Intel as a customer as well as a partner for on the AWS experience or the cloud experience so far. We've been in the industry since about 50 years of providing technology and silicon to our customers. But we embarked on our cloud journey with our cloud partners 17 years ago. So while we had existing environments that were helping us continue to do what we need to do for our customers, we started to recognize the need to have agility, exactly to all of Kanishka's points, the speed, the need to stay completely cutting edge so that, we continue to gain market share and grow market share. And the only way to really get that done with the elasticity component that cloud brings in, with the ways in which we can control the use of our infrastructure and our technology, that's second to none on cloud. And so Intel as an organization has done so much to to create a mixed or hybrid environment where cloud is continuing to help us with the workloads that we know will scale the fastest on the cloud. And then in addition to that, the fact that we started to have vision to actually optimize our technology for cloud so that the compute that kind of powers the cloud is also something that all of our joint customers between Intel and AWS can scale. And so through that journey, if you just track a few of the examples, of our customers, let it be, the governments, or let it be the academic institutions, or even healthcare, they're all traditional. They've all traditionally invested in infrastructure that's physically available for them. But we've started to see a change in the discussion when we go along with AWS or when we talk to our accounts. Our customers come back and say, we need to be able to train 50,000 students, and they will not come to school. and I might do not have the cost or the infrastructure available for having a lab. What can we do? And that's exactly the discussion that cloud, or the challenge that cloud helps address. So while, and exactly to what Kanishka's point is, it's really perception. They always think that, there's a cost associated with it. There's additional skills components that are associated with it. There's going to be this shift in management of infrastructure that will be associated with it. But these are all addressed as opportunities and really not challenges. Of course, if organizations such as AWS just created a cloud environment for the customer and let them be, that will be a different story. But the nurture process that AWS brings along with its partners to make those customers knowledgeable, ready, helping them address the problem that they're trying to solve, and then continuously training them with the academic programs that Kanishka talked about, is really making sure that we've got their back in general. And the cloud journey for any apprehensive customer is really seamless with the power of collaborations and the partnerships and the nurture support that the cloud providers today bring to the customers. It's very unique from the way in which we as a technology company perceive supporting customers. And this is why AWS has been a really strong partner for us, because we see that exactly to their first leadership principle, they're very customer obsessed, so much so that Intel has also adopted this as a leadership value for us as an organization.
Good to hear that, Akanksha. And on the same note, I think that you kind of segued into the next question I had, which was around partnerships, strategic partnerships, right? So, we talk about building, moving applications in the cloud can't be done alone. I think the best way is to forge partnerships with your provider, with your ecosystem, and make it viable, make the transition viable. So tell us how important these strategic partnerships are, and what kind of checkboxes that need to be ticked when you're looking for the strategic partners. I'm sure you would have gone through that journey while getting on the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. I think nothing is possible without collaborations and partnerships, because we have partners that are leaders in their own specific domains. So while and this is again really targeted towards what the customer really needs. We all come together for a business challenge or societal challenge. A classic example of this is how COVID was built for India. The government was struggling. Everybody in the society was struggling, and there was a challenge that the government needed to resolve for. They approached AWS. AWS recognized the need to build a platform that will drive the vaccination drive, which is the number one, I think, from a scale perspective across the world, because of the sheer scale of customers and society members and citizens that India hosts, right? And it needed to be done very fast. It needed to be done on a way that's going to scale from central to the suburban areas. And that's when AWS recognized that while we have this technology, while we have cloud, we're going to bring in the partners that are going to help us scale this to the fastest possible way. That's when they deployed multiple ISVs, deployed multiple startups, brought Intel into the mix so that we can best optimize this for India. And in a span of 17 days, CoWIN was developed and created for the government of India. And that is a classic example of how the power of partnerships really drove societal impact, in addition to obviously industry impact, which is now going to become, a test bed or a platform for multiple such innovations that is going to solve not only for technology and for industry, but for people in general. Because now we have a recipe book that not only India can adopt for other verticals or for other business challenges or use cases, but the entire world can adopt, because everybody needs a vaccine at this time. So that's really like just a quick example of how the partnerships really bring in the change that is needed from a technology perspective. It all actually just originates with the challenge. And through that challenge, technology helps to solve for it. And I think India is a very green house of multiple partners that can come together, that are so proficient and so skilled on the latest and greatest on the cloud, so dedicated to making sure that, we're doing this in the most optimal way, and where the performance of this platform that they're trying to build on cloud is the most that everyone can extract from. And like I said, nothing is possible without the strategic partnerships and also the vision of our customers. If customers don't want to go to cloud, no matter what we want to tell them to do or show them as many case studies, it's not going to happen. So it's the vision of the customers and the power of partnerships that make things happen for cloud.
Thank you for sharing that, Akanksha. I did not know the COVID story, and I'm sure this is one key takeaway from this discussion that we can talk in multiple forums. But Akanksha, you made it sound very easy. I'm sure Kanishka, you're on the other side, and it may not be that easy forging these partnerships, creating products in 17 days, which have a national level billion people kind of load coming in. So any thoughts on such projects?
So
And
I'll probably take it a step ahead, right? AWS had a cloud innovation center with Niti Aayog, where we actually solve for societal impact. The number of challenges that we work with them, ranging from water to aviation to urban infrastructure to agriculture, healthcare, and there have been plenty of projects that we've been doing with Niti Aayog for quite some time. And just about mid last year, we had this request also coming in from the ministry, as well as something that we had brainstormed. And what if we could have a place for Niti Aayog officials, as well as for Government of India or other ministerial bodies, to just experience technology, experience cloud, experience the latest and greatest on ML, high performance computing, IoT devices, and startups also come and speak about it. And once we got a green signal, we immediately spoke to Intel. And we said, and guys, look, here's something that we are working on. Would you be interested to join hands with us? And that comfort comes to us because we are so strategically embedded. Our vision continues to be for citizen impact for good, and essentially helping the lives of 1.3 billion citizens of India. And we're just not limiting to India. We're saying, how can India be the bed for next gen technology? So we are really building for the world, really. I don't even want to use the word sandbox, because I think we are right now building technologies that other countries are adopting. So we're taking the lead on it. And we work with Intel. We from start to, and Akanksha, keep me honest, I think from start to finish, it was 3 months. We had a brilliant new swanky experience studio set up in Niti Aayog with Intel AWS together, which had a lot of startups coming in. We had it kitted with the latest and greatest of technology. And it didn't stop there. We said, why don't we also do something with some of our cutting edge work that we're doing with high performance computing? And so can we actually go ahead and launch, say, a hackathon on HPC with the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office? And we went ahead and launched that, and that's currently underway as well as we speak. And Intel and us have both gone together on bringing this, because Intel comes in with that immense compute power that we are able to leverage on HPC, while we're able to provide the scalability on cloud. So it's really a marriage of win-wins, if you say, on that particular technology. But the point I'm making is, whether it is point solutions or whether it is programmatic initiatives, you need to have strategic partners that will help you reach that vision. We couldn't have done Experience Studio or anything with Niti Aayog by ourselves. We couldn't have done a hackathon ourselves. We couldn't have done CoWIN ourselves. It needed another partner to play along with us as we build this through. So it was really, like you say in cricket, right? Somebody's got to be on the non-strike end, somebody on the strike, and then you swing over, and then the other person is again on the strike end, right? And that's exactly how some of our relationships end up with. And our big takeaway is that if we are to do citizen impact, if we are to build platforms of scale, of national importance, something that will outlive all of us in this room, something that will be a national asset, which will pretty much transform India and align to the Digital India vision, then you need to have multiple partners coming in together to drive it.
Thanks, Kanishka. And I know, I think we are running short on time, so I'll quickly move to the last question, but it's probably the most important one. It's about people, right? I mean, high rate of cloud adoption, but trained workforce is, what do you think are barriers to scaling talent capabilities when we talk about cloud? I mean, what are the elements that people have to focus on retaining, attracting talent? I think Is there something that you would like to start with? Kanishka, maybe you want to get started because you did touch upon it earlier.
I think skilling is a huge play, and skilling really on cloud. Because like I just told you, it's a mind shift change on people who have otherwise been working on servers, on mainframes. How do you get them to operate on the cloud? So skilling is a big part of it. And a lot of our focus actually, even at AWS, and I'm sure at Intel's point also, is around skilling. What can you do both for an existing workforce, people who are immediately ready to move into jobs, as well as for early adopters. And we're talking early adopters as early as into schools. Today, schools are looking at how can they introduce cloud as part of their curriculum. How can we have undergraduate and graduate students have cloud as part of their curriculum, build applications on cloud, whether it's an ML application or a high performance compute or even a regular storage and database sort of application. But can you build it on cloud and move forward? There are certification courses that are out there. These certification courses obviously have a tremendous amount of acceptance in the industry, whether it is from, say, a certified cloud practitioner that AWS has to an advanced specialty, ML specialty certification that again AWS provides. Can you have some of these that will help you bring the journey up? And that gets to the last part of the question, which you said, how do you retain? How do you keep employees motivated to stay on? And I think the sheer volume of challenges that you can solve on cloud and can go across the spectrum, because you're no longer constrained by infrastructure, but rather constrained only by your thought or by the remit of your role, if at all. That makes it a lot more compelling proposition for people to be motivated to be working on it.
In fact, we a few months back we released the cloud skilling report at the NASSCOM Cloud event, and where we brought some numbers out. We said that India has about 600,000 plus cloud certified professionals, but in the next 5 years they will need about 1.5 million. So that means a huge number of people will have to be really scaled up, on cloud skills, and that's one way India could emerge as a cloud hub for the world. So I think that's the kind of targets we are looking at. But I'm sure companies are grappling with their challenges. Akansha, your side of the story, how are you ensuring cloud talent at Intel and attracting and retaining them?
Yeah, I think cloud talent entails so many other additional technologies that the community needs to adopt. So even within cloud, it's not just knowing how you can spin up your next cloud instance for a workload that you might have, but it also embeds AI, it embeds HPC, as Kanishka mentioned, with the challenges that we're launching on a daily basis almost. It also needs, how is IoT really going to work in cloud? So it really is touching across all of those technology 4.0 or industry 4.0 topics that are necessary. So as Intel, of course, with the partnership of AWS, we try and address it in 3 or 4 different ways. It's about keeping the skilling motion going. It's about getting ready for your future skills and getting ready for your current workforce that requires future skills or existing skills that will be there for the future. So first is obviously hitting them in academia, hitting them from schools, as Kanishka mentioned. We launched the AI for Youth program a year ago, where 80,000 CBSE schools today have a cloud as well as an AI curriculum embedded into grade 9 to 12. So getting them that recognition that these are the latest things that you need to talk about when we went to school, and don't judge us. I did COBOL. And from COBOL to all of a sudden, everyone having to learn cloud computing, which is second is hitting the mid-tier, the higher educational, the institutions, working with universities, working with colleges who already are starting to embed cloud curriculum as part of not only just their technology department, but also their individual domain department. So the science streams, the math streams, the engineering streams all have some cloud computing skills that are embedded into their curriculum. That's also something that Intel and AWS help provide, even sometimes for free, to those special departments, including some labs. And then moving upwards to the industry, to the government. Government has an existing workforce of technologists. Are they skilled up today? Maybe not. So exactly through the CIC, for example, projects like the CIC or programs like the CIC, we intend to conduct workshops and make sure that they recognize how cloud is going to help them to get their jobs running faster. And then even above that, we also hit the decision maker levels where we have AI for business or AI for all as a program that we launched with Mighty a couple of months ago, where we literally have courses that are dedicated for how cloud and AI can help you as a CTO or an IT division leader to go out there and start to think about policies that need to be put in place that are going to put India on the map with technologies like cloud. So it's all of these 4 or 5 different layers that are going to get our workforce ready for India. And it's, again, going back to your third or fourth question, it is through collaborations, it is through partnerships, but it is also through making sure that, you know, we have that retained workforce in India that is ready and skilled, that is going to solve for India. And then, as Kanishka mentioned earlier, solve for the world. The need for having 1.4 million developers or cloud developers is probably just touching the surface. India is number 3 ecosystem of developers across the entire globe. We have close to about 4.5 million developers. All of these guys need cloud skills today. So I think the vision of having 1.4 for next year is still a small vision. India is capable of way more, and they've already got the tools, the organizations, and the technology available to help them get to that next level at the fastest agility rate possible.
I completely agree, Akanksha. And the sense people should look at cloud skills as not something which is going to be, I mean, the individuals will only have those skills, but it's a world of hybrid skills, right? I mean, we have to go after everybody out there and get them skilled in cloud. It's a foundational technology for all emerging technology going forward. So that's how I think we should look at it, not look at it as a unique skill set. I mean, it's more like foundational. I think we come to the end of a very extremely insightful session. We touched upon infra, we touched upon process, culture, people, right? I personally learned a lot, and Akanksha, Kanishka, love the honest insights that you shared. Love to keep this engagement going with you in some of our industry research activities around cloud as well. On behalf of NASSCOM Events and NASSCOM Insights, thank you, Akanksha and Kanishka, for your time and your insights today. We'll look forward to future interactions with you. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.